Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Not Your Average Man. I'm Chris. I'm here with Brad, and we have a special guest, Chad. Chad is my son-in-law, so I don't know if he was going to make any kind of claim or let other people know that, but I'm going to go ahead and say, yes, this is my son-in-law.
You like to put labels on people these days.
I'm not trying to put anybody in a box. I'm just trying to give context. Give it context. Here's the ironic part, guys. We're going to be talking about regrets today. And living a life with no regrets. Now, Chad being on has nothing to do with that. Although we've been living at Chad's house while we've been building our house, and so if anybody has been having regrets, it very likely is Chad deciding to let us stay at the house, having no idea how long he was making that commitment for. So, Chad, thanks for being a part of this. We are glad that you're here to be part of the roundtable to join in and give your perspective and your insight on some of these things that we're going to be talking about with regrets today. But actually, Chad, this is probably worth noting, Chad has a farm. And if you happen to hear any...
With a barn.
Oh, yeah, a farm with a barn. And if you happen to hear any wildlife, then that is at Chad's... Chad's barn, and we were kind of chuckling because we could hear some of the guineas. Which I thought would be worth us talking about before we jump into, because talking about regrets, Chad is not pleased about having guineas. And I asked him the other day, I'm like, hey, so guineas kind of look like turkeys. Do they taste anything like turkeys? In which case, I think there was some mulling over that idea.
There's been a lot of mulling in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, they're good if you want to, like, I guess, have something that eats bugs. Bad if you want something that is not squawking and loud and attacks your other birds.
The issue is at this point is they're still great for eating bugs, but they are one of the few things that can get out of the enclosure that all the birds are in, and that precludes them to walking on tables and getting on stuff and pooping on everything, which I don't have a problem with my other birds. So they might go the way of the dinosaur in a couple weeks.
As an entry into living a life with no regrets, let's get into it, because you don't look. We regret is something that's just inevitable. We want to try to stay ahead of it when we can. Can't always see around corners as much as we'd like to, but it's also something we don't want to wallow in. Okay, so Philippians 3:13 says, brothers, I do not consider that I have made it my own, but one thing I do, forgetting what lies behind and straining forward to what lies ahead. So we have to be careful not to spend too much time looking back, because that's just depressing.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it's good. I was going to ask you real quick, so you can hear the guineas. Are you in the barn, Chris? Like, is that where you've been staying since you moved in over there?
No, I've been staying in one of the bedrooms, but I have a feeling.
I've got an idea. So,
but I saw a light go on.
Whoa! Wait a minute.
If these last couple weeks don't move as swiftly as they should, we might have a solution.
Yeah, Chad has been cleaning out and reorganizing the barn. I didn't put two and two together.
It's like, look at this bed with all the hay. This is a good spot. Yeah. You should try it out. It's super comfy.
Look, there's
good enough for Jesus, right?
Exactly.
Saying you're better than Jesus?
Yeah, I know. I'm not better than Jesus. The foxes have holes. The Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. What can I do? Anyway, so living a life without regret. So, not looking behind and all that. So we got this. I like to think of it as like we've got this big windshield, and we drive by using the windshield. Yeah. Small rearview mirror. We don't drive by using the rearview mirror. We drive by the windshield. So the rearview mirror is there to inform us. It's to inform us of the things of the past, inform us of the things that we've done, so we could do better with the windshield. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So I like this question because I heard it one time, and I'll ask you all this.
Yeah.
Do you know when the best time is to plant a tree?
I've 100 years ago. Before. Yeah.
Yeah. 15
I'm
years
going
ago.
with that too. 15 years ago? Okay.
Yeah. 15. And
it is.
100
That's
years
almost
probably
trees.
works.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. 100 years probably doesn't work too. But yeah, 15 years ago. Why? Because then it should have reached enough of maturity, most of your trees, to do what you wanted to do. Shade, fruit, whatever. Do you know when the next best time is to plant a tree?
Today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. See, yeah, people are wondering, why was Chad on? Now we see. So yeah, so if you haven't done, if you didn't do it before, well, you could regret it, but do it now. Start now. And then don't keep waiting. Right? Because we don't want to regret. Yeah. Because we don't want to regret the sin that we've had. We don't want to stay stuck in it because we are paralyzed by regret. Because we have Jesus. And because of that, like what Paul was saying, we could still strive. We could still press ahead and move forward and forget kind of the things that are holding us back and strain past to what lies ahead of us. No, I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm saying it's important for us to do. I mean, in 1 John 1:19, he tells us, if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness.
I love that. I was just thinking, so what do you think are like men's top regrets, I guess? Off the top of my head, I was thinking on like not spending enough time with the family, didn't raise their kids like they felt like they should have, or so along those lines. I was just trying to figure out, I mean, I know my regrets for sure. And I mean, yeah, if you just go back a few episodes, like I just spent like a whole episode on what I've regretted the most clearly. But with that, like what Chris was saying earlier, I don't dwell on that. And I don't think back on, I mean, I can't go back and change the past. So do I wish I didn't do those things? Absolutely. But God has changed all that around. And so I don't look at it. It's kind of a weird place to be because I don't look at it 100% like a regret. I do regret it, but it's not something that's molding me into present, I guess. Like I'm not dwelling on that regret. I'm not making excuses like I should be here if I wouldn't have done that. Like all that's past is downrange. I can't do anything about it, but God has changed that around and helped produce something better. Right. But I was just curious, like,
no, that's awesome. So Chad, I mean, you weren't expecting this question, but since we're talking about, besides the guineas and possibly having us stay at your house, are there things that, regrets that you could think of that you would like to share?
Yeah. Regret is also one of those things where I feel like I'm very objective towards it because, I think about major life decisions, like what I majored in, what I did shortly after college, some of the choices that I made that I'm deciding to move. And in a vacuum, would I say I'd change some of those things? Yes. But on the other side of that, I realize that I may have become a different person, or I may not be in a stage of life had I made different choices. And so it is one of those things where, kind of like what Brad was saying, like, do I regret making some of those decisions? No, because I am content and satisfied with where those decisions led me. If I were making, it's one of those things where if I were making those choices again and not knowing what's coming after, I would make a different choice. But knowing what I know, I don't know that I would change anything about how it played out.
Yeah. No, that's a good point, because I was actually, when you were talking about that, it made me think, we still probably don't know how all these choices are going to play out yet.
Right.
So it's just it's a weird place to be in, because society, when you talk about regrets, it's like, man, I wish I could have done that over again. I wish I could have done all these things. But also society as a whole is looking at regrets without a foundation of faith, right? Without being a God follower, a Christ follower. And so, yes, we all make mistakes, but it's just the weirdest place to be in, where it's like, yeah, if I was in a vacuum, like you're saying, Chad, I'd 100% be like, if I can go back in time and find my younger self, I'd be like, hey, dude, these are the things you like, stay away from. Don't do it. I know you don't think you'd do it, but you're going to do it. So don't do it. And then who knows what my life would have been like, you know? Now I look back and I'm like, yes, I regret so many things that I did, but where would I be? Like, God has just changed that all around. So if I had the worldly view only, I don't know if I would just sit there and be like dwelling on it like, oh, if only, instead of the godly view where I'm like, hey, I make mistakes. I continue to make mistakes. I strive not to make decisions that I'm going to regret, but they're probably going to happen still, right? There's probably going to be decisions 5 years down the road from right now that I'm going to end up regretting making a choice. But those choices that I'm making now, those decisions I'm making now, ultimately, I know that God's path for me, whether it's a spider web and he's like, if you do this, I'm going here, doing this, but all is leading for his glory. And so I know he's going to have me somehow take care of me as long as I focus on him. Right. And so it's just an odd place. Like it's a super weird place to be where I don't have like this dread and sorrow of like, oh man, I've talked about this with Lisa. We've both talked about it. We hate that all that happened, but at the same time, our marriage is 100 times better than we could have ever imagined. Now, could we have done it another way? 100%, but we have no idea where we would be if we didn't overcome this through Christ, right? Well, it's just I don't even know how to explain it. I'm trying. I just don't know.
Yeah, well, and to even take it a step further, like we're already looking through a biblical lens when we look at this, but to focus that in even further is we believe that God is sovereign, he's in control of everything, and he allows bad things to happen. And so from that sense, I think regret in regards to other people is different in regret in regards to your own personal life. So like there may be decisions that I regret because they affected someone else, and I 100% would change those if I could. And I think people look at those as like, I made a decision and it hurt someone. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's any problem with looking at, yeah, I would change that 100%. But when I get introspective and I look at the things and how it's affected my life, I don't necessarily view those the same way, because I know that God allows everything to happen according to his purpose, according to his will. And so in some sense, yeah, a bad thing happened, but God allowed that to happen. And now I see on the other side of it, you know, maybe there were some bad consequences, but hopefully there was some sanctification with that as well. And I'm now able to see like, okay, God allowed evil to happen, but it was ultimately for his glory. You know, you think about I think the best example that we always talk about is you look at Joseph and you look at all the things that happened to him, and he allegedly did everything right, but bad things still happened to him. And in the end, we know that saved him and his family from utter destruction, but he has no way to see that in time. He's just being faithful. And I think that's the perspective we've got to have is, I don't know how this is going to work out, but I'm going to be faithful. And from a secular point of view, that can look like dumb decisions or poor decisions or unwise decisions, but we know it doesn't matter the perception. We have to be faithful to what we're called to.
Yeah. Because I was kind of thinking, that's what I was going to say before, is I was thinking, okay, even on the deathbed, I guess you can look back and go, okay, yeah, I regret this, I regret that, I regret not doing this or not. But I think, in just what you're saying, Chad, I think it's more of a secular mindset, maybe, because and not an eternal mindset, because we have no idea how God has used that and how he'll continue to use that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Alicia and me have really been wrestling with this concept recently. Is you think about God as creator, and you think about us as creations, and if I'm molding a piece of pottery, that piece of pottery doesn't get to tell me what to do with it. So, you know, yeah, maybe I'm going through something that's really rough and it's really frustrating, but that doesn't mean that I get to tell God he shouldn't be doing it this way. You know, but there are negative things in life that are just a fact of life, and you have to accept them and move on. Mm-hmm. we groan and we yearn because life is not supposed to be like that, but we know we're not there yet. And we know that until we are there, those types of things are going to happen, and we have to learn how to accept them.
Yeah. Yeah. We're living in a Genesis 3 world. I mean, so there's going to be pain. There's going to be suffering. God uses it. It's purposeful. It doesn't ever go without purpose, whether we know it or not. And like you're saying, Chad, before, it molds us into the people that we are today. And Brad, you even mentioned too, what would happen if we didn't have those experiences? Yeah, would it have been nicer to have different ways to get where we are? Sure. But to be where we are, I mean, how much would we want to pull at that thread that could unweave all this other stuff?
I mean, it's so deep.
I don't know.
Right? It really is, because it's along the lines of like experience, spiritual maturity, all these things that maybe I would have taken 10 years to get to. And now, because of something bad that I've done or whatever, past regrets, like the major ones, right, that could have altered a whole timeline of my marriage and where we're going and kids and all that. I mean, maybe I would have matured a lot sooner, in both ways, right? Physically and spiritually. But having those experiences, right? Like we coach, we do all these things. We try to help other people, and we've built a ministry on what some would say is the biggest regret that anybody can make in a marriage. And we've built a ministry that God's given us on that alone. And so I think that, we probably would be here in some form or fashion, helping marriages, trying to do something, because we are passionate about that. But that fire was started because of horrible decisions that I made. And then God reaching down and snagging me, right? Like leaving the 99, going after the one, and then building that back up into, now that story isn't about Brad shaming himself and making horrible decisions. It's about, look at God's glory shining through all that, like where we are at now. And I mean, because there are 100% little tiny regrets, I think, that all men face that daily. I mean, I had one last week where I was like, man, I probably shouldn't have been as mad as I was, but I was super frustrated. And so I was like, I regret, because I don't think it shows on my face, but everyone else sees it. And so everyone's seeing how mad and frustrated I am. I even had a comment later, like, dude, you were super mad and frustrated. I was like, absolutely I was. Then I sat on it that night, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go apologize to this one dude. And I didn't smart off on him or anything like that, but he could see I was visibly mad. And so I went and talked to him and like kind of mended that bridge. He didn't even know, like he knew I was mad, but he didn't even think like anything of it. So it was more of like an apology I needed to make for myself, I guess. But I regretted like leaving that day so frustrated and so just letting my emotions kind of get a hold of me a little bit. I mean, I wasn't like lashing out at anyone, but as I sat there on that little regret that could have been major if I didn't know how to like hold emotion back, right? Could have burned some bridges, but and just lit the way the whole way. And then instantly regretted it, right? Yeah. So when I got back, and then just ate away at me, like, you know what, tomorrow I'm going to go over there, and when I go to talk to him, I'm going to just apologize for him and like explain why I was so frustrated, right? But it was still just an apology. I was like, man, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have acted like that. Shouldn't have been like that. And so, I regretted that immediately. Now, I don't feel that was this huge monster thing that was like hanging in the balance, like I'm going to lose my job and I've shattered my testimony, right? Like who I want people to know Christ through me at work. And then I shatter it all away because I'm mad and yelling and flipping tables and do whatever. And so it wasn't anything that extensive. But I sat there and I was like, man, this is something I can make right. And I wish I wouldn't have done it. So I think that's a little regret that's you can't get away from, right? But the big ones, that's why I was curious if you had, I know, like, well, I'm asking because your producer texted and said that there was a list of like a few regrets, right? That men like secular. It was she said, the producer said it was a secular list of regrets that men faced. And I didn't have the list, but I was just like, man, I wonder what that is. And I think it's like crucial too that she even put secular, because I do think that we as Christ followers, you do look at regrets differently. I really think that you do.
I hope so.
And you mentioned we're living in a Genesis 3 world, and when we talk about sacred and secular and use that terminology, the average person is living in a Genesis 3 world, but the believers should be living in a Colossians 1 world where everything is held together by the preeminence of Christ and knowing that we have hope regardless of what we've done in life.
Yeah.
All right, we're done. Yeah. You can go and press stop. Get the producer out. That was it. We're done. That was a wrap. That was perfect.
We'll just loop that last part. Guys, if you're not sure what to do, just loop that last part. Listen.
No, that was 100%. I love that. I was amen.
I did too.
Yeah.
But no, it's 100% right. And I love that. We should be set apart. There should be something different. And I think, unfortunately, too much of the time, and that's one of the challenges of being just an average guy. And I let me qualify. Just because you're not a believer doesn't necessarily make you an average guy. It's really kind of the concept of being of the world and doing what the world does is more of that average thing versus the above average, the better than average guy who's doing it God's way. Now, are we going to blow it? Yeah. And that's where Brad, what you're saying, even the small things, that's where the 1 John 1:9 comes in. We've got to confess. We've got to be faithful to forgive, to ask for forgiveness, and then we are forgiven. And so there's a lot of that. But are we living in that with that mindset of kind of that average where we're thinking more on worldly stuff and we're focusing more on worldly things instead of eternal things, instead of God's things, instead of the kingdom things? Or are we making sure that, hey, when we are, that we don't lose our witness, right? But if we do we make it right? Those kind of things. And yes, I do have said list, and I would love to go through these lists. It is a top 10 life regrets from non-believing men. So it's just average things, and I'm going to start with number 10. Not that I'm David Letterman, but I just figured just starting at 10 would be a good one. So number 10 was not playing a team sport.
I don't know, man. Okay, for full disclosure, like I played team sports all through high school and college. So but I feel that if I hadn't, I don't know if I have a regret about it, because, maybe that comes from, let me just throw this out there. Maybe it comes from like, man, if I'd have played a team sport, I could have probably been good. And then I could have probably went to college, had college paid for, and then who knows, I'd be in the league, right? Playing for like big bucks. Listen, anyone out there thinks that it's like less than 1% that ever goes to that level. It really is. Like, it is scary how much people put the emphasis on sports on their kids, as far as like, I think there's value, there's 100% value behind it, but the emphasis they put on that sport as far as like, they got to be great at it. They got to go to the best high school. They got to get the best clubs for it. It's like,
travel leagues.
Travel leagues, all that.
Yeah. And that's a sticking point for me I'm super passionate about. So if you're hearing this and this is you, I'm not shaming you, I'm just challenging you a little bit. It's like, think about how much money and time you spend doing travel league to get into whatever college or whatever you perceive as that next step. And think if you had retooled and reinvested that time, and in some instances that money, into what you actually want your child's future to look like. And I'm not saying that any of those things are bad.
No.
But I do think that there are instances where, and I've got a pretty obsessive personality. Like, if I'm in something, I'm all in with it. But I do think that we can shortchange not only the child that is involved with that, but the people involved with that as well. So if they've got siblings, you've got your spouse, you've got all the other people involved with that. And that's one situation where people who say they regret not playing a team sport, but I know the other side of that, I know tons of parents who regret putting their children through that. And then once they get on the other side of that, they wish they hadn't had all that pressure growing up.
Yeah. And guys, just for the record, Chad, among other things, right? Among a giddy farmer is a youth pastor.
Oh, wow.
So he's what he says he's been exposed to kids. He's been exposed to youth programs and things like that. And even through college and doing work with kids and all that. So he's seen that. He's had that exposure from that side. So yeah, if you're listening to this and you are pushing your kids through sports, even if you ask them, hey, is this really what you want to do to please you? They probably are going to say yes. But you might want to consider, what if you were to back off? What if you were to and I'm not against it. I played football. I played soccer. I played some team sports. Is it fun? Is it good for kids? Yeah, sure. There's certain things that can weigh into that. I guess it depends on what you're doing it for.
Yeah, no, it does. I and I don't know, like the more explanation to number 10, I regret playing team sports, but I look at that and like my kids they've played a little bit of team sports, but they really don't. Like basically both the boys are in jiu-jitsu and do competitions and things like that, because they love that. Right. And I feel that that's a good transfer to actual like future. Right. But they are great around teams. But it's because I've instilled that in them, right? Like I've tried to teach them how to interact with people and how to share, right? Basically. But so I don't know if like that guys that answered that question, I don't know what they're going through, or maybe you're listening and you never played a team sport and you're like, man, I suck at the office when we have to do a team project. I have no idea. But if you're not going to learn all that by playing a team sport, I guess, because listen, this is not to say I was probably an average player, right? I was not like some phenom out of college or anything like that. And I had the opportunity to play through college, and there were definitely dudes on that team in high school and in college that were individuals, not team players, that didn't even understand the like the work ethic that some of us had to have, right? They were kind of just like flippant about what they were getting to do and all those things. So if you're thinking, oh, if you play a team sport, like all that's going to change. And this is what, like that guy's horrible right now in the office because he never played a team sport. That's not true. I don't think you can make that correlation, because I've met some like great men. I'm on a team right now. Like in my world, we are teams. Not all of them play team sports. No way. But these are the guys, like these are high level individuals, and we gel together as a team. And again, not all of them play team sports, but they all get the team environment. Right. And so I would just challenge like people, if that's one on your list of regrets. I didn't make a list of my own regrets. But if that's on a list of regrets, like rethink that one, because I mean, that could have just, I don't know. It's not, I'm not saying sports are not good. I think they're great, and I'm a proponent and all that. But just like Chad was saying, it goes on like, what are you pushing your kids to do? How much money are you spending on it? And great if you can do that and you have a balanced life and you're building these kids up to be strong Christian followers, and to like, you're raising kingdom kids, right? Then great, keep playing the sport. But if you're not, and you're still doing all that stuff, and I mean, listen, we drive to church and we pass by a sports field and it is filled. And I'm not saying all those people aren't Christians, don't get me wrong, but they will be there rain or shine. Doesn't matter what time of day it is, but you open the doors of church and it's like, I don't know. I stayed up late last night.
It's hard to say that something is important and then put it behind some other activity that you claim is not as important.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like I'm ragging on it too much. I'm a huge sports guy. I played soccer for 16 years. I played rugby in college. I'm the biggest college football nut on the planet. So don't hear me say that sports are bad. That's not what I'm saying.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Just in case somebody got that idea, like, this guy just hates sports. He's probably a nerd. Well, I'm not too.
Yeah. So
yes.
Right. Yeah. But hey, and we'll wrap this up with this one and we'll go to the next one. But I'll just, if you're a believer, you are in a team sport.
Yeah.
Right. You're playing on God's team, and
put it on a coaster.
So, yeah. So
right.
Yeah. It is a team sport. We're all one body. All right. Well, we certainly hope you've been enjoying the first half of Living a Life with No Regrets. We're going to continue down the list of regrets that men have on our next episode. So we hope that you join us as we continue down the second half of the top 10 next week. So until then, continue to become better than your average man.